Her birthday fell on a Friday night in Charleston. Late spring, that time of year where the air feels warm but not heavy yet, when the river reflects the last bits of daylight like it's holding on to summer before it arrives. Hannah picked the restaurant, of course. She always did. Some boutique little spot tucked along the marina, with white tablecloths and hand-painted menus and servers in pressed shirts who knew when to disappear. It was the kind of place you went to be seen in, not just to eat. And Hannah loved being seen. Not in a vain way, not obviously, but in that subtle, practiced kind of way that some people master without ever letting you call it what it is. I arrived a few minutes early. The parking was tight, and I had to loop around the block twice before finding a spot. When I walked up to the restaurant, I spotted her through the glass. Already seated at the long corner table, laughing at something Grant, her boss, was saying. He leaned toward her like there wasn't a single other person in the room. She was wearing this dark green dress I hadn't seen before. Fit like it was made for her. Her hair was curled, makeup done just enough to look casual, except I knew it wasn't. Hannah didn't do casual. Every detail was intentional. I stood there for a second outside the glass, unnoticed, watching. Not like a creep, just observing. Like I was watching someone else's life. Someone else's wife. Then she saw me and lit up like always. "There he is," she called out as I stepped inside, waving me over with a grin that could cut through fog. Everyone turned to look, and suddenly I felt underdressed and out of place, like a +1 who'd wandered into the wrong party. But Hannah stood and kissed my cheek, then pulled me in for a tight hug. Her arms around me were familiar, but something wasn't. The scent. It hit me before I could even pull away. Sharp, spiced, masculine. Not mine. Not even close to anything I'd ever worn. I let the moment pass, but my brain didn't. Cataloged everything. Filed it under unexplained. I sat down next to her, across from Grant. "Ben, this is my favorite boss," Hannah teased, touching his shoulder briefly like they'd known each other forever. "Don't let it go to his head." Grant smiled, a little too polished. "Only boss," he said, laughing. "So technically, I win by default." The server came by, poured wine, took orders. Conversation flowed, mostly work talk. I nodded, chimed in when I could. But I was mostly listening, watching, picking up the edges of things. And then it happened. The server returned with our drinks. A round of wine. Glasses set down, clink, 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 one by one. When Grant lifted his, I noticed the mark right away. A perfect Berg *NDY lip print on the rim of his glass. Deep, defined. Same shade Hannah was wearing. I glanced at her own glass, nothing. Not a smudge. Not even a fingerprint. It looked untouched. I didn't say anything, not right away. I just looked at her. And she looked back, clocking my expression faster than I expected. "Oh my God," she said suddenly, loud enough for the whole table. "This service, I swear." She laughed, the kind of laugh people use to control a room. And then, without hesitation, she swapped her glass with Grant's. Smooth, almost elegant, like it was just a quirky joke. "Did I kiss his drink?" she joked, raising an eyebrow. "Happy birthday to me, huh?" The whole table erupted. People laughed, toasted, waved it off. But I didn't. Because here's what struck me. She didn't look surprised. Not confused. Not embarrassed. She looked prepared. Like someone caught mid-scene, not off-script, just moving to the next line. I nodded, even laughed a little. I played along because that's what you do in public. That's what you do when you're not sure if you're overthinking or standing on the edge of something that's already started to fall apart. She looked at me again after the laughter faded, gave me this light touch on the arm like we were still in sync. But the touch felt like punctuation. An end mark, not a beginning. The rest of the night blurred. I smiled when I needed to, listened to stories from people I barely knew, coworkers and clients and people in marketing who only knew me as Hannah's husband. Someone asked me how long we'd been married. 7 years, I said, like I was stating the weather. No warmth, just fact. At some point, dessert came. Chocolate mousse, candles, applause. Hannah posed for a photo with Grant, him behind her, one hand on her back. She didn't flinch. Didn't even lean away. She didn't look like my wife anymore. On the drive home, she played music on her phone, some playlist she'd made for the night. She sang quietly under her breath. Her head leaned against the window, that same woody cologne still faint in the car. It didn't smell like a mistake. It smelled like something deliberate. "So, what did you think?" she asked after a while, voice light, casual. "Nice place," I said. "Food was good. That chocolate mousse, right?" She laughed, tapping my hand. "I could eat that every day." "Yeah," I said, staring ahead at the road. "That mousse." She didn't press me, didn't ask why I sounded distant, and I didn't bring up the glass, or the scent, or the fact that somewhere between the wine and the mousse, I'd started feeling like a third wheel in my own marriage. At home, she slipped off her heels by the door, said she was exhausted. "Do you mind if I shower before bed?" she asked, already walking upstairs. "Go ahead." She kissed my cheek again. Same spot, same rhythm. But this time I didn't close my eyes. I just stood there and watched her go. The bathroom door clicked shut. The water turned on. And I sat at the edge of our bed, staring at my shoes, the scent of her still hanging in the room like an unanswered question. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that the lipstick on the wrong glass was just a mix-up, that the cologne was from a hug, or a joke, or someone brushing past her, that her deflection was just quick thinking, not a performance. But that night, something lodged itself deep in my chest. Not pain, not yet, just doubt. And once doubt moves in, it never unpacks lightly. It would have been easier if there had been some dramatic shift, some door slamming or screaming fight. But the changes didn't come like that. They came slow, soft, like dust settling in places you didn't realize were even dirty until the sun hit them just right. The night after her birthday dinner, I woke up around 3 a.m. and reached for her instinctively the way I always had. My hand landed on cold sheets. Her side of the bed was empty, the bathroom light on behind a cracked door. I didn't ask. And when she slipped back under the covers, smelling faintly of soap and eucalyptus, I pretended to still be asleep. But something about the silence between us, intentional, preserved, told me that if I opened my mouth, the spell would break. And I wasn't ready to know what happened if it did. The next morning, she made coffee like usual. But she didn't hand me a cup. Just made one and walked out the door with it, heels clicking too fast across the floor. That's when I started paying attention. You learn a lot when you stop assuming the best. She changed her passwords. That was the first real clue. The shared calendar we kept for years. Appointments, trips, reminders, those little notes like, "Pick up almond milk," or "Call mom," just vanished. One morning it was there, and the next it wasn't. I asked about it casually, pretending I needed a time for her dentist appointment. "Oh," she said, not looking up from her phone. "I moved everything to Notion. Easier for work. Can I get access?" "It's kind of messy right now," she replied, waving it off. "I'll clean it up and send it later." She never did. Her phone stayed glued to her palm, like it had been surgically attached. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it came to bed with her. Slept on her side of the mattress. Screen always face down. Silent mode. Notifications off. I tested it once. I called while she was in the shower. The ringtone didn't sound, but the screen lit up twice. Once for the call and once for a message that flashed too fast for me to read. Some messaging app one didn't recognize. When she came out, towel around her shoulders, I mentioned it. "You're paranoid," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Work chat app. Nothing sketchy." She said it like it was funny, like she was in on the joke, and I was too uptight to laugh along. But the only thing I could think was, if it's nothing, why hide it? Then came the showers. Right when she got home. Every day. Like clockwork. No hug. No "how was your day?" Just straight up the stairs, leaving her heels by the door and her clothes, sometimes inside out, tossed into the hamper. Not just once. Not just after workouts or long days. Every day. And always immediately. I remember the first time I checked the hamper. I wasn't even trying to catch her. I just wanted to know what I was dealing with, if I was crazy. But there they were. Faint marks on her blouse collar, smeared foundation, traces of a lipstick color she hadn't worn in months. Her scent used to be light, floral, peach blossom and honey. Now it was something deeper, heavier, something that lingered on her jackets even after she said she hadn't worn them in days. One night I asked, "Did you change perfume?" She blinked at me like the question surprised her. "No. Why?" "Just smells different," I said. She paused, then shrugged. "Maybe you're just used to it now." But I wasn't. That scent wasn't hers. It was someone else's. One afternoon, I took her car to get the oil changed. Nothing dramatic. Just a favor like I'd always done. But when I looked at the odometer, something clicked. The mileage barely changed. Maybe 10 miles added, tops. But she'd said she'd gone across town twice that week. Errands, she told me. Meetings. The kind that should have added at least 50 or 60 miles round trip. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I was collecting puzzle pieces without knowing what the picture was supposed to be. But my hands were starting to shake when I picked each one up. Then came the frozen location updates. It was subtle. We had our phones linked through a family app, nothing invasive. Just a practical tool we'd use to meet up, find each other, that kind of thing. But now, her location would stall. Stay at downtown Plaza for hours. Even when her text said she was at the office or on the road. Sometimes it would blink offline altogether, then return with a tiny jump in coordinates. Never enough to notice unless you were looking for it. And I was looking for it. The weirdest part? She never slipped. Not once. No late-night guilt texts. No misplaced receipts. No oops moments. It was like she had rehearsed every word, every movement. When I asked where she was, her stories were airtight. Too airtight. That's when I knew. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't accidental. This was methodical. And yet, she still smiled at me like everything was fine, like the little cracks weren't spreading across the surface. I tried to test her once. Brought up Grant casually while we were doing dishes. "He seemed comfortable at your birthday," I said, scrubbing a plate. She didn't even look up. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. I didn't realize you two were close." She dried her hands, slower than usual. "He's my boss, Ben. I spend 40 hours a week with him." "Right?" She looked at me then, but not like she used to. Not with affection or concern. She was gauging me, measuring how much I knew. And in that moment, I knew I had to stop pretending I was imagining it. I stopped asking questions after that. Stopped giving her opportunities to lie. Instead, I watched. I kept notes, little mental timestamps. When she left. When she came back. How long the showers lasted. What clothes she wore. Whether the laundry smelled like detergent or something else. Her tone. Her eyes. How often she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. The most heartbreaking part? She wasn't angry. She wasn't distant in that cold, resentful way. She was polite, almost formal, like a guest staying too long in someone else's house. Everything between us became surface level. "Need anything from the store?" "No, I'm good." "How was your day?" "Fine." "Want to watch something tonight?" "Maybe later." Every reply was a wall. One night, I woke up to find her phone buzzing on the nightstand. I turned over and looked. Just the screen lighting up over and over with a new name I didn't recognize. No last name. No photo. Just a contact saved as M. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I didn't touch it. Didn't open it. I just stared at the glow and let it fade. The silence in the room felt loud. That's when I realized, silence isn't passive. It's active. It's shaped. Controlled. Held in place like glass. She wasn't talking less because she was tired or stressed. She was doing it because silence was safer than slipping. Safer than telling the truth. And the truth was I wasn't crazy. I was being managed. There's a strange calm that settles in when you already know what you're going to find. You stop hoping. Stop rationalizing. The guessing ends, and what replaces it isn't relief. It's resignation. Cold, heavy, inevitable. That's where I was by the time everything aligned. The lipstick, the cologne, the locked phone, the stories that bent but never broke. It all built toward something I couldn't ignore anymore. The night it all came together, I was sitting in my office, pretending to work. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Hannah had gone to another work dinner. I didn't bother asking who was there anymore. The word work had become code, a password to which I no longer had access. I opened my laptop, pulled up an old contact, a guy I'd helped years ago with an IT issue at a security firm. We hadn't spoken since, but I remembered him saying something once over beers. You'd be shocked at how much truth lives in the blind spots of cameras. I messaged him. Nothing complicated, nothing desperate. Just, hey, I need footage from Riverview Bistro outside. Past week. Quiet favor. He replied 10 minutes later. You got it. I'll scrub it and send you what you need. I told myself I was being paranoid. That maybe seeing proof would finally silence the voice in my head. But deep down, I already knew what kind of silence I'd earned. 2 days later, he sent a file. Lot of dead air, he said. But I trimmed it to the window you mentioned. Timestamp matches the night of the dinner. I waited until she was asleep before watching it. The footage was grainy but clear enough. A narrow side passage next to the restaurant, lit by the weak yellow glow of a motion sensor. Trash bins. A service door. You could see the main patio in the background. Couples laughing, waiters moving in and out. And then there they were. Hannah and Grant. Started casual, him holding the door, her laughing about something I couldn't hear. Then they stepped out of view, closer to the shadowed wall. You could see her reach up, adjusting her dress strap, then his hand brushing something off her shoulder. It looked innocent at first, reflexive. Then the air between them shifted, even through the screen. I could feel it. The space closed. His hand didn't fall away. Her smile didn't fade. Then she kissed him. Not a stolen kiss. Not quick or uncertain. Slow. Steady. Familiar. She leaned in first. He didn't hesitate. I remember pressing pause, staring at the frozen image. The sound of my own heartbeat drowned everything else. I thought maybe I could find a way to make it not what it looked like. Maybe it was staged, a joke, a dare. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe my eyes were wrong. My brain scrambled for any loophole. Any possible alternate universe where my wife wasn't kissing another man in a half-lit alley behind a restaurant where I'd paid the bill. But then I noticed it, the smallest detail. When they finally pulled apart, she reached up and wiped at the corner of her neck. The same spot where, the next morning, I'd seen a faint reddish smudge on her pillowcase. I'd assumed it was lipstick from the night before, but it wasn't hers. It was his. I cross-checked the timestamps. The footage showed them leaving the restaurant at 10:42. She told me we'd left together at 10:30. Our house security log showed our door opening at 11:02. 30 minutes unaccounted for. 15, maybe 20 if you cut the drive time. 15 minutes to erase 7 years of marriage. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was structure, timeline, data, evidence. The kind of truth that doesn't scream or demand. It just exists undeniable and still. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. I went outside, sat on the porch, and watched the river shimmer under the streetlights. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world looked the same, even when everything inside you had been rearranged. The next morning, she was humming in the kitchen, pouring coffee, sunlight on her bare shoulders. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "You were out late last night. Couldn't sleep again?" I nodded. Yeah, couldn't sleep. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I saw Grant's name flash on the screen before she flipped it over. Her hand moved so fast it looked rehearsed. That's when the calm broke. That's when I started planning. It wasn't rage. It wasn't shouting or throwing things. It was colder than that, like something had snapped into alignment. Every lie she told fit perfectly into place now. Every detail I'd dismissed as overthinking suddenly had a shape. She left for work that morning, and I sat in the living room, staring at her empty mug. There was lipstick on the rim, the same deep Berg **NDY. But this time it was mine to keep. I watched the video again, then again, then again. Each time, something new stood out. The way she adjusted his tie before they walked away, the familiarity in her posture, the small smile she gave him when she thought no one could see. It wasn't an affair just beginning. It was one already perfected. When I finally shut the laptop, I realized I wasn't shaking anymore. I'd reached that point people talk about, when anger becomes precision. I started documenting dates, times, **TS transfers. I saved the footage twice, then again on a separate drive. I took photos of the pillowcase, the calendar gaps, even her receipts, because I knew that once the truth comes out, people start rewriting history. I wanted a record that couldn't be erased. That evening, when she came home, she greeted me like always. The same smile, the same practiced warmth, the same question. How was your day? Quiet, I said. Yours? Oh, the usual. Meetings, calls, endless emails. She kissed me again, light as air. And all I could think was, you kissed him exactly like that. She went upstairs to shower, her ritual, her cleanse. I stayed on the couch and listened to the water run, staring at the muted glow of the TV. I wondered if she rehearsed what to say in there, if she whispered lies to herself until they sounded true. When she came back down, she smelled faintly of lavender, the same scent she used to wear before everything changed. Maybe she thought I'd notice. Maybe it was her way of covering the other one. She sat beside me, scrolling through her phone, smiling at something unseen. You okay? She asked after a while. Yeah, I said. Just tired. Don't work too late again tonight, she said, patting my leg. I smiled. I won't. But I did. Because that night, I wasn't working. I was rewriting the story of my own life. The moment I pressed play on that video, I stopped being her husband. I became the witness. And once you've seen the truth with your own eyes, you can never unsee it. There's a point where grief gives way to function. You stop asking why and start asking how. How long? How deep? How much of your life was real? You stop bleeding and start tracking the wound. I hit that point 4 days after I saw the video. The morning routine stayed the same. Hannah moved around the kitchen in her soft slippers, sipping coffee, checking her phone in careful intervals, pretending nothing had changed. And I kept pretending too, because by then, pretending was useful. After she left, I waited exactly 13 minutes. Long enough for her to get past the nearby intersections. Long enough to make sure she wouldn't turn back because she forgot something. Then I went to her office, not the one where she worked, but the one inside our home. She hadn't used it much since the pandemic eased up, but her laptop was still there, neatly docked, screen dark. Took 3 tries, but one of her old passwords still worked. She was smart, but not perfect. The moment the desktop loaded, I knew this wouldn't be simple. Her folders were clean, no stray files, nothing labeled suspiciously. But that's the thing about people who are hiding something. They always try too hard to look organized. And the more polished the surface, the more likely something's buried underneath. I opened a document folder buried 3 levels deep. Inside, I found an alias directory, not titled Affair or Private, but something boring, Q3 Archives. Inside were PDFs of scanned receipts, hotel bookings, email drafts, even photo thumbnails with innocuous names like IMG_202204009_2B. JPG. I opened one. It was her, in a sunlit loft, legs tucked beneath her on a leather couch I didn't recognize. 2 glasses on the table, one hand holding a wine glass, the other resting on someone's thigh, cropped but masculine. Familiar. The next photo was the same loft, same couch. Her again, different dress, different day. She looked comfortable. At home. The 3rd photo told me everything. Hannah sitting on that couch, laptop open in front of her. A Word document visible on the screen titled, Alibi Note, Thursday variant. The preview line read, Meeting overran, won't be home until 9:45. Leftovers in fridge X. I just stared at it. Not in shock, I was past that. Just with this cold recognition that I'd been scheduled around like an appointment. I checked the metadata. Photos were dated weeks apart. Consistent times: Friday nights, early Thursday evenings. Days she told me she was leading a workshop or covering for a coworker. I opened her browser. History cleared. But her downloads folder was full of exported files from a rideshare app, PDFs of trip summaries. I cross-referenced the addresses with maps. One stood out: a loft on Riverside Drive, the same building from the background of the photos. She'd been dropped off there 7 times in 3 months. Always between 7:30 and 8 p.m. Always returning after midnight. Always on nights she came home freshly showered. I checked the transactions. Each ride was paid using a card linked to a digital wallet, one I'd never seen before. I dug deeper, eventually found it under her maiden name, connected to a burner email address. It had 3 regular transactions per month: a rideshare bill, small ATM cash withdrawals, and one mysterious payment labeled Rent S. Loft Holdings. S. Loft Holdings. She was paying rent, not just staying over, not visiting. She was invested. I opened a spreadsheet she'd left minimized. At first glance, it looked like a budget for some kind of renovation. Then I realized it was a property investment proposal. Costs for updated fixtures, HVAC upgrades, soundproofing. The property address? The same loft. And at the bottom of the file, in bold, Quiet Shore, Phase 1. Discrete client experiences /NDA required. I froze. This wasn't just infidelity. It was infrastructure. A business model wrapped around betrayal. I found a second folder better hidden. Inside were presentation decks, full of mock-ups and flowcharts, logos, marketing plans, even user flow diagrams like this was some kind of app or platform. Phrases like personalized escape experience, confidential connection facilitation, and dynamic anonymity protocol were plastered across the slides. It was a startup, a side project, funded in part by her foundation's budget. She had labeled it under a shell company, Quiet Shore LLC. I kept scrolling. Buried in the slide notes were phrases like soft launch Q2, exclusive investors only, test group capped at 10 high-trust participants, no digital footprint beyond schedule window, all payments processed through anonymous merchant accounts. The language wasn't romantic. It wasn't even emotional. It was logistical. I sat back, letting the sick realization settle. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't weakness or passion. This was engineered. A system designed to conceal a life running parallel to mine. And then I found the calendar. Not the one she'd deleted from our shared account. Her new one, stored locally, labeled simply, personal, private. I clicked open the week of her birthday. There it was. Wednesday, S. Loft, 8 p.m. Confirm grant. Thursday, foundation lunch, send alibi script to R. Friday, dinner at Riverview, switch glasses if needed. Saturday, transfer from backup wallet, prep next week rent. Sunday, draft post-launch letter to Ben, delay insurance notice. That last line hit harder than any photo. Draft post-launch letter to Ben. Not talk to Ben. Not discuss with Ben. Notify. It wasn't a conversation. It was a conclusion. Planned. Executed. Finalized. I backed up everything. Copied the entire drive, encrypted it, and stored it under a different name on a separate cloud account she didn't know existed. I didn't delete anything. I didn't confront her. I didn't leave angry notes or changelocks. Not yet. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table that night and watched her come home. Same greeting. Same perfumed hug. Same practiced kiss. She opened the fridge, pulled out the leftover pasta I'd made the night before. "You didn't eat this?" she asked. "Wasn't hungry." She microwaved it, humming something under her breath. I studied her, the way she moved like this house still belonged to her. Like her life didn't live elsewhere. Like I hadn't just unearthed an entire parallel existence she'd spent months, maybe longer, building right in front of me. "How was your day?" she asked, mouth full of food. "Quiet," I said, and it was. because the storm was no longer coming. It was already here, and now I was in the eye of it. Some betrayals cut in a straight line. Others unfold in layers, so precisely stacked that by the time you reach the core, you forget where the bleeding even started. What I'd uncovered already was enough to blow a hole through the middle of our marriage. But the worst part was realizing she hadn't just hidden things from me, she had built systems to keep me out. And one of those systems had a name, Quiet Shore LLC. That phrase had haunted me since I first saw it at the bottom of the presentation deck. A neat, impersonal title. It could have been a beachfront rehab clinic or a minimalist candle company. But I knew better. It wasn't soothing. It was strategic. And it wasn't just a name on a file. It had weight. I started pulling threads. First, I searched state records. Quiet Shore LLC was registered 6 months ago in Delaware. Classic move. No member details, no physical office listed, just a mailing address linked to a corporate filing service. The contact email was generic, but I recognized it. It was one Hannah had once used for event invites, buried deep in her spam folder, still synced to her laptop's autofill. Then I ran the tax ID through the federal database. That's when things clicked. Quiet Shore wasn't some impulsive side hustle. It was funded. Real money. Real partners. Real infrastructure. The listed assets included renovation invoices, payroll disbursements, and property insurance, all routed through subentities with vague names. Salient Ventures, Foresight Media Group, Relay North. At first, they looked unrelated. But I noticed familiar entries buried in the payment logs, her foundation. Cross-checking those spreadsheets with Hannah's main work files showed something no PR team could spin. Cross-payments. Specifically, grants marked for community engagement were quietly redirected through layered bank accounts and reimbursed as consulting fees to shell entities that all, eventually, tied back to Quiet Shore. It was clean. Too clean. Until you lined them up side by side, and then the shape of it appeared. I opened a folder labeled Guests. At first glance, it looked like a simple CRM. Names, notes, contact preferences. But then I realized these weren't customers. They were participants. Silent, NDA-bound participants. Each entry had notes like, prefers no eye contact. Book during sound-coded lighting blocks. Request, scent-coded suite. Peach/vanilla combo. Spouse believes they are in grief counseling. Compartmentalization protocol, high. I stopped reading halfway through the list. Whatever I thought this project was, it wasn't personal anymore. It was industrial. She hadn't just cheated. She'd harnessed infidelity, monetized it, systemized it, turned it into an experience you could book, schedule, hide, and repeat. And someone, likely several people, were paying to participate. Discretion built in. Exposure locked down. Morals optional. I found a pitch deck next. Something she'd clearly prepared for potential funders. It opened with the line, "What if discretion wasn't a barrier, but a feature?" The following slides laid out the vision. A curated network of furnished properties, soundproofed, smart-scented, digitally masked, where clients could have emotionally untraceable experiences without any connection to their primary identities. The branding was subtle. Clean fonts, pale ocean colors. It looked like a therapy app. But buried in the language were phrases that stripped the innocence bare. No surveillance zones. Dynamic alibi scripts with AI timing integration. Int asterisk Macy room resets between sessions. Auto-timed HVAC and laundry. One bullet point chilled me more than the rest. Relationship transparency is a social illusion. Quiet Shore provides freedom without consequence. That's when I realized what she believed. Not just about me, but about us. We weren't partners in her mind. We were compartments. I was the life she came back to when the other one went dim. The safety net. The warm silence. The steady. But in her world, love was a layout, not a commitment. And I had been slotted into the quiet half of her double life. I kept digging. There was a document marked after launch planning. Inside were bullet points for personal to-do items. I scanned the list, heart pounding. Notify Ben, after launch. Post, Q3 only. Shift utilities to individual accounts. Redirect HOA and insurance to personal checking. Pre-schedule therapy, announcement session, if needed. Use foundation travel stipend to cover end-of-year relocation, if required. It was all there. The exit plan. She hadn't just drifted away. She had mapped the escape route and left breadcrumbs to make it look accidental. She'd even included emotional damage control. A draft email to a therapist outlining a narrative that would make me the initiator of the marriage's breakdown. She had written my future for me. I sat back in my chair, my fingers numb. I'd been erased. Not loudly, not violently, but with polish, with forethought, like a file she intended to archive and never open again. And she was still here, still sleeping 6 feet from me, still sharing toothpaste, still asking if I wanted anything from the store. But in her mind, the ending had already happened. I just hadn't been informed. That night, she came home late. No explanation, no excuse, just a peck on the cheek and a comment about traffic. I watched her take off her earrings one by one, the little gold ones I bought her on our 3rd anniversary. She placed them gently in the velvet dish by the sink like nothing had changed. Long day? I asked. She yawned. God, yeah. Meetings back to back. We're getting close to the gala. I nodded. Yeah, I figured. She looked at me then, studying my face. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just tired. She came over, placed her hand on my shoulder, fingers light. You've been distant lately. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just nodded again. Sorry. Work's been heavy. She leaned down, kissed my forehead. You should try to sleep earlier. Then she turned and walked upstairs. I listened to her footsteps until they disappeared into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch a while longer, staring at the dim hallway, the same hall I'd walked down 1,000 times before. Except now, every picture on the wall, every piece of furniture. It all felt like set dressing for someone else's show. I was done watching, done speculating, done waiting for the next reveal. She'd shown me everything I needed to know. Not in confessions, but in plans. Plans that didn't include me. The only question left now wasn't if I would act. It was how soon. I stopped reacting like a husband and started thinking like someone being erased. I gathered every file, mirrored her laptop, froze shared accounts, and scheduled legal meetings. I documented everything, timelines, shell companies, alibi scripts. Quiet Shore wasn't just infidelity, it was fraud. And I was done being silent. On her next birthday, she threw another fancy dinner. I showed up with Grant's wife and handed Hannah a tablet mid-toast. It held the footage, receipts, the entire map of betrayal. The room froze. By morning, Quiet Shore was shut down, Grant was fired, and Hannah was out of a job. I moved out quietly, no drama, just finality. That night became a legend. The evening where the truth stood up and clapped.